Hi there. House of the Dragon is going to be using a gigantic new virtual production stage at their new production hub for the entire franchise at Leavesden Studios, which is just outside of London. A virtual stage using advanced LED displays. It's like what Star Wars' The Mandalorian famously used for many scenes. Everyone was talking about that last season. Now, I split this off. Originally, it was part of the locations video that they're going to be filming in Spain and Portugal. Got too long, decided to split it off into its own thing because it's very different, that they're going to be using a virtual set like The Mandalorian did. They announced it recently, but we actually figured this out a couple of months ago, about 3-4 months ago, because when we're checking their IMDb updates, Internet Movie Database updates all the time, under their visual effects companies listings, it did say this company called Lux Machina, which is specifically the kind of company that handles virtual production sets. They handle the programming for those, Lux Machina. So that's how we started realizing we think they're going to be using what The Mandalorian did. But just recently, they officially announced it. So it's being covered in all the news like Variety. I'm going to link to the article there for you. The sound stages at Leavesden are named by letter. And fittingly, this new digital one is V Stage, V for virtual. It's the newest and one of the largest virtual production stages in Europe. It has 24,000 square feet of internal space, inside of which there's a 7,100 square foot wraparound virtual production environment. And it uses this matrix of over 2,600 LED panels with this advanced control system. You have to program it to create these traversable virtual backgrounds for live actors to film in that will move as the actors move. It's like a crude version of the holodeck from Star Trek. And it also has a moving ceiling element, because when you point the camera up, it has to get the sky right. It has these ceiling panels that even move, which have 5,500 square feet of LED panels with 8 sections that work independently of each other. I made a whole write-up here after reading through all the specs on this. There's these 8 sections that move independently, and they can lift and tilt to give a greater sense of depth and scale. That if you're down in a valley, you can show higher mountains by raising the ceiling literally, and then the panels will, like a photo with like a painting with depth, they can show a deeper mountain. There's all sorts of articles on this. It's amazing that the stuff they can do with these virtual sets, and the size of it. It's a 7,100 square foot wraparound screen. This is amazing. Can't wait for behind the scenes videos about this. This whole virtual set is gigantic. I mean, for a sense of perspective, Titanic Studios in Belfast was the old production hub. All of the interior space at Titanic Studios combined was about 42,000 square feet, so 42K. The entire Leavesden Studios complex, which is the main production hub in Europe for WB films, for Harry Potter, for DC films, DC Comics, the entire Leavesden Studios complex is 548,000 square feet. 548,000 compared to 42,000 for Titanic. That you could literally fit Titanic within Leavesden about a dozen times. It's about a dozen times the size of Titanic, spread out across multiple movie and TV projects. I mean, obviously, they're filming DC movies in a lot of these places. But consider that Titanic is 42,000 combined. And the new digital V stage alone, just the new virtual stage, is over half that size. 24,000 square feet, half of that would be 21,000. The virtual stage alone is 24,000 feet. All of Titanic put together was 42,000. This is over half the size of that, and just all virtual. You can program it, move around in it. And what's more important is they're not just squeezing this in. They just confirmed in the official announcement that House of the Dragon is being used as the big test bed project for their new virtual stage facility. It's not something that DC Comics is letting them borrow from the next comic movies or something, or whatever their other franchises are. They're not just going, oh, our main franchise, they're using this, you're a fantasy show, but you can squeeze in a few hours to work on it, or like a week when we're not using it. No. They said, this is the primary project we are using as the test bed for the new virtual stages. We are prioritizing use of the high-tech new virtual production stage for House of the Dragon. Other things have to wait in line behind it. This is their new flagship project for this technology, for their company and their use of it within their franchises. They're not just squeezing it in, and that really surprised me. That I thought they might do this a little because it's a newer technology. I thought, for a few things, leftovers from DC Comics stuff, they said we're prioritizing it for House of the Dragon. Now, that's not to say they'll be switching to digital-only stuff. Don't get worried. I just went through a whole big report on how they're going to be doing location filming in Spain and Portugal. We've seen them doing location filming at that really gorgeous castle in Cornwall, which I don't know how they found that. It looks like what Driftmark Castle is supposed to look like. That it's a tidal island with a castle on it. At high tide, it turns into an island. At low tide, there's a land bridge. I thought they'd have to do that virtually, and they didn't. They found that. The complaint a lot of years was that people are over-relying on CGI, and Benioff and Weiss made a mockery of that because they wanted to show off how much money they were spending, and have all sorts of giant, long documentaries have made on this. They didn't know what they were doing, and their answer when people would question, you're not writing this well, was, we're going to hire so many stuntmen, and it'll be the biggest on-screen battle in history, and everyone will praise us for its scale. And if you've seen my channel, this went to the point of absurdity in season 8, where they were hiring hundreds of stuntmen for a battle scene at Winterfell, then filming them in the dark. That they actually built a fully realized Winterfell castle set, fully realized with, and they point this out, functioning bakeries and breweries, functioning ones that never appear on screen and were never intended to be. The clips from the Last Watch documentary proudly explaining, like they were oblivious, like people on set even going, yeah, we built this stuff people never see, and we wasted millions of dollars on it, and time that we're not getting back, limited production time. Like in the Last Watch documentary explaining, we built a fully realized King's Landing street set with 17 alleyways and dozens, literally dozens of fully furnished shops behind doors that are never opened and were never planned on being open. They never intended the camera to go into these buildings. But in the behind the scenes, they go in and go, look, we have a fully furnished shop in here. Did you ever intend for this to be on camera? No. Then why did you build it? All those man hours wasted on furnishing interiors of buildings they knew that the camera wouldn't see, they were just showing off how much money they could spend. And it didn't matter. It wasn't, oh, well, we'll give them what they want. If you gave them enough money to hire 200 stuntmen, they would have wanted 300. If you borrowed money to hire 300, they would have wanted 500. Nothing was ever big enough. It wasn't about realizing the goal. It wasn't about we have to make the biggest show in history. It's they wanted to show off how much money they were spending. And we see this in other videos. They talk about, well, we want Stonehenge and the horse, which I'll talk about later, that they really thought that equaled quality. So it's the opposite of overuse of CGI, is someone gave these crazy people a blank check and they tried to actually build all these sets. And you've seen the clips. I don't need to keep repeating it. They're all the new people. They really thought, no, we're going to build everything for sets they didn't really need. This isn't like, it has to be proportionate to its use. Do you want to build a fully realized throne room set? Yes. Do you want to literally spend $10 million building the interiors of shops that you don't intend the camera to actually see? Because they did that. Virtual sets that you don't need to do this. And it was a waste of money because they were idiots. And in this case, they have the benefit of state-of-the-art, top-of-the-industry virtual production stage, like what The Mandalorian did, which I hope will lead to less of that. What they were so obsessed with spending money on fully realized sets. I have clips of like them really mocking to her face the production designer that we made you build a fully realized Wintertown set for no reason, and laughing at her, and she's just gritting her teeth. These are people who would spend millions on that, and because they don't have infinite money. Then when we go, why weren't there any direwolves in this episode? They just lift their hands and go, well, we ran out of money. This isn't infinite money. The money they spent the direwolf budget on fully realized sets with doors they never intended to go in that had furnished rooms behind them. Dragon shots that for most of the run of the show, you only ever saw Drogon. And if you saw him sparingly. Like season 3, season 4, if you actually sit down, they did not set up that in the books, all 3 of Daenerys' dragons have distinct personalities and do different things. And it became a joke within the fandom. It's not just me that, well, here's Drogon on screen, and well, the other 2 are over there, and they don't even say their names they didn't say their names on screen until season 5. Because, or was it season 4? Late in production that they really were bizarrely obsessed with not using CGI for fantasy animals. Or they go, we ran out of budget for the direwolves or the dragons or the giant ice spiders, big as hounds. And they just shrugged off that complaint after the finale of, for years you were hyping that the White Walkers ride giant ice spiders as they do in the books. That would have been a cool new element to the battle. Why didn't you do that? Oh, well, all the money we could have spent on CGI, we spent on a fully realized castle set. It's absurd. And imagine, look, I'm thinking of, we got in The Mandalorian, because I'm talking about The Mandalorian, we got closer to giant ice spiders big as hounds in that season 2 episode, like the second episode where he crashes on the ice planet and he's dealing with the ice spiders in the caves. That became sort of a fandom joke as well. When that aired, we were like, oh man, they got ice spiders. Why don't we? Because it's a virtual set he was working in that they could put in the ice spiders. Now, we're not going to have White Walkers in this show, and I don't think we'll have direwolves either. We will have a lot of dragons. There's 20 living dragons. Imagine how much of a benefit it is that you can be walking around in a virtual set where they actually have a reference, or they can, I'm not sure if they'll green screen it and add it in later. I don't think they can put it in real time. Actually, in season 8 clips, I've seen, for the cameramen at least, they had animatics for the dragons, like superimposed on the camera so they could tell where they were. It wasn't finished quality, it was an outline, but yeah, you could see that. So they'll explain more in their own behind the scenes videos, but imagine how much it benefits a show that has this amount of dragons in it, just zipping around across King's Landing for travel, just casual travel from Dragonstone to King's Landing, that they have this virtual set. This is a massive benefit, which we really needed, and I don't want them to be building sets on the scale of what season 8 was doing, where it verged on, it felt like some kind of graft scheme. It felt like some kind of scheme that we're pocketing the production. They were trying to impress people with, this is ridiculous, when you really see how much they physically built that they didn't need to. Now, as Aristotle teaches us, in all things the middle path, in all things moderation, that there is such a thing as you're overusing CGI just to, at detriment of the story. This is that rare case where they gave them a blank check, gave them a lot of money, and then they turn around and say, well, we spent all the direwolf money on the sets that were filmed poorly and or unused. So things are looking good for this right now. And it's not all going to be virtual. It's not all going to, when people are worried, oh, the Mandalorian's going to all just be virtual, says, well, that's Star Wars. That's different. They're alien worlds. We have seen the Cornwall filming. They're going to be filming in Spain. Really impressive location filming within reason. Like, think back to like season 1 of Game of Thrones, where it felt like ostensibly, obviously we heard that they were behind the scenes problems later. It felt like this is what a normal show would be doing, of, yeah, we'll film at some castles in Malta, Morocco, Croatia, which are like the walls of Dubrovnik, which you can't replicate easily. Dear God, these are real medieval walls. I really think that if you let them, Benioff and Weiss would have tried to, in many ways, they did try to rebuild Dubrovnik in Belfast for season 8 with that set. They just didn't have time to build the sea walls of Dubrovnik, but I think they wanted to. They just, dude, we have a virtual set for that now. What's great is this isn't just for House of the Dragon, though, that they want to make multiple spin-offs. We've heard them saying we are considering multiple other spin-offs. Another one that they were talking about recently was Nymeria and the 10,000 Ships of the Rhoynar. That would have a massive amount of CGI. That's Valyria at its height. There's hundreds of living dragons. They're fighting a massive war. They're traveling on ships to islands in the Summer Sea, to Sothorios. But they haven't greenlit that to pilot. They greenlit the script, and then they will greenlight the pilot based on how good the script is. They hired a script writer, but still progress is being made there. My point is, this isn't just great news for House of the Dragon, but because Leavesden is the new hub for the wider franchise here, that multiple different spin-offs, think 5 years down the line, will benefit from having this virtual set, and that they're giving them access to it and really prioritizing it. So this is one of our flagship franchises. They get to use the big virtual set, which is over half the size of all of Titanic Studios put together. And it's not just the virtual set either. Leavesden just completed a massive new expansion this past year. In addition to the virtual set, they built 3 full-sized regular sound stages as well. So altogether, these 4 new sound stages added to what they have 19 sound stages at Leavesden now, spread out across multiple projects. For other Warner Brothers stuff. Those 3 new regular sound stages added about 83,000 square feet of entirely new space, not being used by any other project. That when I said, well, I don't know the exact figures, they are, sharing space at Leavesden. They are one of several projects. A lot of it's already being used by DC Comics projects. There's 83,000 square feet of open space, not the virtual set. This is just regular space for them to build King's Landing interiors in, Dragonstone interiors in, for House of the Dragon. I don't know if all of it's going to House of the Dragon, but a lot of it will be, and it's twice the size of Titanic. That was 42,000. Yeah, we added 83,000 square feet of blank new space for new projects, such as House of the Dragon. They're not just squeezing it in with their other stuff. They had a whole big new expansion, probably specifically slotted for Westeros projects. And that's not even counting the virtual set, which they stated, we are prioritizing use of the virtual set for House of the Dragon. It is our new big testbed project for that. Virtual set half the size of Titanic. And that isn't even to say they might not be using parts of the other remaining 15 sound stages for what they really need, depending on what's shuffled around. In a crunch, they could fit in more stuff if they really need to. I mean, given that the other sound stages, that they're over 400,000 square feet, and let's be generous and say, oh yeah, we need to film a season finale set here. Can you spare 24,000 square feet for a little bit? Oh, okay, that's not that much compared to the 500,000 feet they have. This place is huge. One of the biggest in Europe. I think based on these numbers, I'm putting them on the screen here so you can tell despite my rambling, I think the sheer amount of interior space they've got available potentially for House of the Dragon is at least triple what they had at Titanic Studios. Comfortably triple. When they keep saying we're not just squeezing it in alongside the DC stuff, we built a new soundstage entirely for them. We're prioritizing. I don't know if all 3 are for them. At least one would be prioritized for them because it's a major franchise. We'll have to ask, which one is considered your stage. But they'll talk about that in behind-the-scenes videos as we go along. Leavesden Studios actually has a map on their website of their different sound stages, and it has a list of all 19 of them. Like I said, they're listed by letter, so it goes down 19 letters. And it lists their size. Most range in size from 18 to 24,000 square feet. A few are 35,000. And the largest soundstage in the entire Leavesden complex is L stage. L for Leavesden, I guess. L stage is 48,000 square feet of interior space. That, yes, you could literally fit the 42,000 square foot Titanic Studios building complex inside of the largest soundstage at Leavesden. It's 48,000. You could take it apart piece by piece and rebuild it within this other soundstage. It's bigger than it. That's one of 19 different ones, though it is the largest of them. And while I'm rattling down what their physical capabilities are, on top of all the new space, regular space just for sets, and the virtual stage with all the LED screens and stuff like Mandalorian did, Leavesden has massive water tank facilities for filming sea battles for various other movies. Well, they wouldn't build two ships moving around, fighting each other like in Master and Commander, broadsiding each other or something. That would be amazing if they built two ships in the same tank. I don't think they do that. They pretty much do what Game of Thrones did, where you build one ship and then refilm different scenes on it. But Game of Thrones had one large ship prop, which they sort of squeezed in. They couldn't even fit it in Titanic Studios. They had to build it at a separate facility a little further south of Banfield. And it wasn't so much a tank as it was a big green screen, and there was some water around the sides for splashing and stuff. It wasn't really a big water tank. It was a green screen for a ship prop. And we've seen shots of this, and they explain it's the same ship. We just redress it for different ships. That you'll film all of Dany's scenes on her ship, then you'll film all the Jon Snow scenes on a different ship, all the Stannis fleet ship on that, then the rival fleet films on the same prop, that sort of thing. This is bigger than that. This isn't, well, we kind of built one on a green screen. They have a dedicated water tank. Actually, they have two water tanks at Leavesden Studios. It's that big. They have one interior one and an even larger exterior one. And the interior one is smaller, but dear God, you have an interior water tank to film a ship battle in. The interior one is called D stage. It's this big 60-foot by 60-foot water tank, 60-foot square, area-wise. And I did the math here. It said 10,800 square feet. Doing math, if it's 60 by 60, on average, it must be 3 feet deep or so, but maybe there's a deep end. I don't know. And, it's a heated water tank. It's a 60 by 60 foot pool, heated and filtered, and it's indoors, so you can film in all weather. You can film water battles. And think of it like a big water park wave machine. If you've ever been to a water park that has a wave machine, but it's entirely indoors, 60-foot square area, while the exterior tank is 250 feet square, 250 feet on a side. And this is really important for us, even more than Game of Thrones, arguably. The story of the Dance of the Dragons has very prominent naval battles in it. That some of these, they even say the Battle of the Gullet was the biggest naval battle in history. And when Stannis is coming to King's Landing, they don't try to fight him on sea. They send fire ships filled with wildfire to blow up his ships. Then he lands. That wasn't really a sea battle. Can you really think of a sea battle involving multiple ships and dragons zipping around? We had bits of that. We had, when Daenerys defeats the slavers, they burn one ship. And it takes all three of them, only for then Dany to zip around in the finale, blowing up all sorts of ships. That isn't two sides. That was all just CGI. When the dragon is blowing up ships, that's CGI. I'm talking involved fleet battles. I'm thinking Master and Commander, or in boarding actions, when you see the Battle of the Gullet, or other things like that, because that'll be later on. Even in season 1, a major part of the storyline is Daemon Targaryen and Corlys Velaryon fighting a private war against pirates and mercenaries from the Free Cities in the Stepstones Island chain. If you read The Rogue Prince, a lot of, when you think, what would the fighting in season 1 be? A lot of it would be the war for the Stepstones, fighting pirates, fighting mercenaries, using the Velaryon fleet versus Free Cities fleets. So we are due for a lot of major water battles. A lot of sea battles are going to be in this more prominently than we're in Game of Thrones. When I say prominently, I mean not just dragon blowing up ship with CGI, or the one ship battle, which was a nightmare to film, and a lot of people got injured, and it was their fault for poor planning. When Euron attacks Yara's fleet in season 7, that was really a battle filmed on the deck of one ship at night, so you don't even have to see the other ships. Now, this would be a full-scale Trafalgar-style fleet battle with multiple boarding actions back and forth. I mean, the scale we're talking about here, or just the zipping around the Stepstones. Or think about how well-equipped they are to film Nymeria and the 10,000 ships of the Rhoynar with a water tank set on this scale. For anything involving sea voyages like that, or when we see the Summer Isles in the Nymeria show. All of that, just the facilities they have here are amazing, and we are due for some big sea battles. And getting back to the virtual set, just how are we going to fit dragons just casually into all these shots in King's Landing? Not even battle scenes, just flying around using them as transports. That this is really how they're going to add the dragons. I'm sorry, I think I got my math wrong. When I added up that Leavesden has 558,000 square feet of internal space, that's including the water tanks, because the interior tank is considered stage D. But even if you don't include the water tanks, that's still over 460,000 square feet of internal space. If I take out the water tanks, and if I subtract the virtual stage, that's still just in regular stages, that's over 460,000 square feet of internal space. So my mind boggles at what the upcoming prequels will look like. In many ways, the actual locations for House of the Dragon are a bit more limited than Game of Thrones. They don't go to other continents outside of Westeros. They don't have a storyline at the Wall in the far north. We wouldn't really go to Dorne or the Iron Islands in earlier seasons. Most of the story takes place in the core regions of the Seven Kingdoms. I mean, like in the Riverlands, generic, here's a field in the Riverlands, and there's a battle at the nearby castle. A lot of it's fighting near Harrenhal. And a lot of season 1 and a lot of the rest of the show is set in and around King's Landing and Dragonstone and the nearby island of Driftmark. Maybe bits of Harrenhal. I think we'll see bits of the Stepstones because there's a lot of fighting pirates there. That it isn't as much of a globe-trotting thing. But on the other hand, so many more dragons are in it extensively. And some people are always going like, how would they even afford that? Well, they don't have to make CGI zombie armies anymore. There are no difficulties of working with CGI. Well, they're real actor wolves that are then sized up digitally into direwolves. They don't have to spend money on the CGI digitally resized direwolves anymore, or the zombies. All the special effects budget is pretty much going to the dragons. And I can see that working out. That they don't need to be stingy anymore about showing the dragons on screen for budget reasons. On top of that, there's something to be said for exploring every nook and cranny of a location in detail. That yes, more of this story takes place in King's Landing, with battles and things, not just having random adventures. That there's fighting, there's street fighting, there's all sorts of stuff in it. But compared to like Star Wars, if someone said, well, we've seen Coruscant already, the capital planet where it's a globe-encompassing city, just from pole to pole. Well, we've seen Coruscant from space, but there's always another port, mechanics garage, smuggler's den in lower levels. There's always another part of Coruscant that we haven't really explored yet. And which, look at the cartoons, like Clone Wars, like Bad Batch, there's always another place to visit on Coruscant. It is a whole planet. It's not as if everything that happens on Tatooine needs to happen at Mos Eisley. So you can explore different parts of that. So I'm looking forward to what can they do with this virtual stuff. Are they going to build King's Landing street sets? Or are they going to make like a virtual, fully planned out King's Landing that you can walk in on the virtual set as digital extensions or something. I mean, how much of King's Landing, as described in the books, did we actually get to see in Game of Thrones? Not that I'm even blaming them for this. The scale is huge. They could never have fit all of it on screen. They had to just say, oh, here I am at Gendry's shop, which is, a redress of the bakery they visited in an earlier scene. It's building. It's still, but they tell us that versus you can walk around in this thing. Imagine if they do this the right way. If we have competent people in charge now, actually having a virtual King's Landing set, which is like a one-for-one recreation of literally every alleyway. Because people like build King's Landing in Minecraft. These guys have Minecraft times a million. They have a virtual stage to build it on, where actors can walk around as if they were in a Star Trek holodeck. And compare that to how ridiculous it was when Benioff and Weiss said, no, we're going to build King's Landing physically, 17 alleyways, and then we're not even going to go in all of them. Versus, it's a digital stage. You can move it around based on your needs. So I'm really excited about this news about the virtual set. It's half as big as Titanic put together. All of its interior space put together. Other Star Wars channels have covered this a lot more about this new technology, the virtual sets, which are photorealistic. It's the virtual sets that the Mandalorian used last season. Not the same sets. They use their Disney sets for that, but that same technology. They just built a really big new one at WB's studios at Leavesden, and they're prioritizing it for House of the Dragon. And beyond all this other stuff, in terms of internal politics, what does that say about the faith that Warner Discovery, the new company Warner Discovery, the faith they have in the upcoming prequels? That this is them announcing to the world, we are treating House of the Dragon, the Dance of the Dragons prequel, as one of our flagship franchises. This isn't something we're embarrassed about or Benioff and Weiss destroyed it forever. No, we are proudly giving this stuff our best resources. This is one of our flagship things. So please, if you want to read more, check out the article on Variety, which was talking about this. I linked it below there. And just imagine what they can do with all the goodies they have at Leavesden, because they really managed to cover up pretty well just how much everything was cobbled together in Titanic and Belfast. And in subsequent behind-the-scenes videos, we found out there really were inefficiencies and problems that Benioff and Weiss themselves said, we don't know anything about logistics or making a TV show. And at great cost, they'd hire a lot of third-party things and cobble them together into, we don't have enough storage space. We'll buy up a lot of third-party things and hire a lot of truckers. And that's more expensive than had we planned this out in a dedicated large-scale facility, which is what we have now. And it's not just for House of the Dragon, it's for all potential upcoming prequels. So what do you guys think about all the space, the virtual sets, the water tanks, and what might they actually be able to realize on screen with all this?